Welcome to Work This Way, a labor and employment podcast. I'm Tina Emerson, alongside Jennie Cluverius, a Maynard Nexen labor and employment attorney. Hey, Jennie.
Hey, Tina.
Good to see you again. Today, we're continuing our discussion on generational differences and Gen Z trends in the workplace with Caroline Warner, the Director of Community Development at South Carolina Power Team. In part one with Caroline, we had an insightful conversation on the values and communication styles of Gen Z in the workplace. And now we're going to dive further into the relationship between technology and Gen Z, as well as workplace policy tips to help employers understand key traits about this generation. Caroline, one of the hallmarks of Gen Z is that they are referred to as digital natives. Tell us what that term means and why it's a defining factor for this generation.
So the iPhone was released in 2007. So the oldest of this group was 10 when that came out, but the vast majority of them were much younger. It's really understandable that they are glued to their phones when they have had the most technologically significant advancement since the wheel at their fingertips all day, every day of their entire life. And that is not just access to all of the information ever, but it's endless scrolling on social media. It is every video game you've ever wanted to play, whether it be individual or with your friends. It is all the entertainment in the world. And so that is, if you have that all day, every day, of course you're going to be reliant on your phone. Now that creates a real problem when it comes to the workplace, right? Of we need you to be productive. We don't need you checking social media all day, every day. And that, I don't have a large Gen Z workforce, but I would almost treat it like smoke breaks. If we have to stop so you can take a look at your phone, great. But we're going to go ahead and discuss that beforehand so everybody knows we've got phone time coming up. But again, kind of back to what we were talking about in the last episode, remembering that it's not just bad acts when they are doing this. There is a really understandable reason why they are effectively addicted to their phones, and it's because they've always had their phones. And COVID, Zoom school certainly did not help. So just keeping in mind, there is a reason why this is happening, and again, having that wherewithal to say, okay, we're going to go ahead and know that there's going to be a need to be on a phone. It's just reality. But, we are all on our phones all day too. It is not, Gen Z gets tagged with this, and I think somewhat unfairly. You can go to any meeting, any conference ever. The boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, everybody's on their phone. And so just understanding that is human nature, and it is not something that is worth even trying to stamp out all the way. But again, if you're an employer and it is a privacy or a security issue, that being really, really communicated on the front end of this is not we don't want you on your phone. This is really important to our core business of privacy and making sure we are not, exposing any kind of information that we need to keep really tightly held. And so that is just, again, a communication issue.
Mm-hmm. And certainly operating machinery on a manufacturing line while trying to scroll through your Instagram feed is not safe either. And certainly communicating that up front, I think, with this generation is important. So I have another question for you, Caroline, about a different hallmark of Gen Z, and that is that they have somehow harnessed the power to shape culture and wield influence through the use of social media, both as individuals and also as a group. Talk to us about this kind of, I don't know if it could be used for good or evil, superpower that Gen Z has created and how it can impact employers.
So it's so interesting. I don't know if Gen Z is actively aware of it, but they have effectively unionized. They are sharing and consuming so much of their day-to-day lives, so much information, that they are acting as a collective for good, for bad, no value judgment being passed, but they understand acutely that if they all do the same thing, that it's unstoppable. It's like a tsunami. And so they are working collectively to shape the world that they want to see, the workplace that they want to see, the consumer goods that they want to see. You know, they understand the power that they have as a whole. That can be really scary for an employer, right? But being aware, again, going back to, you need to be monitoring these emerging trends. You need to be aware that this is happening. It could be good, it could be bad, but it is happening and you cannot be blind to it. And it is your responsibility to be aware of it. To that point, I know a lot of people are very concerned with being canceled. But we used to call being canceled a PR crisis, and that is something you can overcome. Companies can survive being canceled for the most part. Now, if you are a bad actor, like insert celebrity name here who has been canceled, is that being canceled or is that being held accountable for your actions? And so having that perspective of, okay, a PR crisis is something that we're all familiar with. We know you can get past it. And then Gen Z is canceling people in that they're holding individuals or sometimes companies accountable for bad acts. And that's fair enough, right? You know,
and conversely, they can also make things wildly popular, as we have seen numerous times with products, companies, individuals. So it can also be used in a very positive way, I imagine, to impact employers and to draw attention that's positive to their workplace and potentially recruit and retain.
If you are a lovely place to work, if you are taking care of your people, they are going to share that too. They are going to brag about how great their work-life balance is, how wonderful their manager is, how willing to just learn back and forth and, you know, career advancement. If you, in the same way that you will get canceled if you are not cultivating and taking care of your work environment, if you are doing a great job, they are going to be your evangelists. They are going to shout it from the rooftops. Everyone is going to know, whether it be on their TikTok, on Glassdoor reviews, where word of mouth. If that's such a great point, Jennie, of everyone's fearful of the negative aspect of it, but the inverse is also true, that they are able to just do so much. I mean, to go on a little tangent, I see TikToks all the time where there will be someone's grandfather is, you know, knitting booties or something, and he is sad because no one is finding his product, and it'll go viral overnight, and all of a sudden he'll sell 300,000 sets of booties in, you know, a week. And then you get a follow-up video where he's just sobbing because his life has been changed. Gen Z too, you know, they care about diversity. They care about, you know, social awareness. They care about a positive world around them. If they can act collectively to make things better, to make things happier, to make things a little bit more fun, they're going to. And it's really inspiring and lovely to see, but
there's always two sides.
There's always two sides.
Right.
And, you know, it is hard to change a company culture. And so it can feel insurmountable. Mm-hmm. But, you know, a little bit of work day by day, making sure you are minding your P's and Q's and just doing, you know, being treated how you would want to be treated. It's going to change your world. You know, if Gen Z gets a hold of you for good, watch out.
And, you know, they say good news travels fast. Bad news does travel faster. And so we always have to be careful of those things. Employers should definitely be on their P's and Q's there. So I'm going to change gears a little bit. We've heard terms like quiet quitting or quiet vacationing, especially when it comes to Gen Z, whether or not you are unhappy at work, bored at work, or you're holding out waiting for the next big thing. Why is Gen Z getting tagged with these terms, and is that fair, and what does that mean for employers?
I don't know that it's fair, because I think it is Gen Z and millennials. But quiet quitting is a really nifty rebrand for being disengaged at work. And since the beginning of time, we've had disengaged workers, right? For Gen Z, quiet quitting is effectively, to the unionization point earlier, I've heard it described as like a workers' rights protest of you pay me to be here at this time and to leave at this time, and I do exactly that. And you pay me to do these, 7 tasks, and I do exactly that, no more, no less. And, that's just a perspective. But I think the more concerning aspect of this phenomenon is the quiet quitters who, this really became popularized when you had high performers who were reverting back to a median, because your highest performers were getting performance review after performance review where they were saying, you are a star. We could not do this without you. However, once again, we do not have it in our budget to compensate you any further. And so your superstars are learning that the only reward for a job well done is more job. They are going to effectively start acting their wage. And that is, again, a culture issue, right? It is, are you understaffed? Are you, not good at doling task out? It's, that should be manageable, but also, younger workers are acutely aware that if you cannot afford to give them a raise, 9 times out of 10, you cannot afford to lose them. And so they are just saying, listen, I gave it my all. I did everything that I thought it would take to progress in my career. And I was told, nah. And so they're just going to say, okay, if that's this dynamic, then that is this dynamic. Which is sad, but it's kind of where we are. So again, there's kind of 2 facets to the quiet quitting phenomenon. One is just, it is a cultural thing, and the other is being disengaged at work. And that is, again, something we've had since the beginning of time. Quiet vacationing is really fascinating to me. And
how are they different? They don't seem different to me.
Well, so quiet vacationing is almost exclusively a remote work situation, because it's, really hard to, if you're in the office every day and say like, I'm not going on vacation, but I won't be here for a couple of days. So quiet vacationing is, again, there's kind of 2 facets to the phenomenon. One, and this is largely Gen Z, is if you pay me to be remote, why does it matter where I am if I'm remote? And that aspect of this is either an IT issue, a security issue, or a trust issue. If it's an IT issue, if you need to be on a secure connection, if there is, if you cannot just VPN from anywhere, that should be clearly stated from day one in an employment agreement of, you cannot just work from anywhere, and it is because of the business we are doing, and that is very, very well communicated and understood. The second part of it is managers essentially saying, I don't trust you to be productive if you are not in the room that I expect you to be in every day. And that is a trust issue, right? If I'm paid to be remote and I, work from my bedroom every day, but then all of a sudden I work from my bedroom in my parents' house, what really is the issue there? That's going to be the argument from Gen Z. But again, there's a facet of this that goes to high performers. And a huge aspect of this is when you have people who have tried to take vacation and have not been allowed to disengage because, oh my gosh, I just need you a quick second. We've got an emergency. Can you help us with this? Or, I know you're supposed to be on vacation, but we just really need you to like jump on this call real quick. And so they say, well, why even bother? Or, and this is something that you hear over and over again, and I think it's a little bit crazy, but teams that are so bootstrapped that, you know, you submit PTO and managers say, must be nice to be able to take vacation. Wish I could leave, but, you know, somebody's got to keep the lights on. And so, again, that comes back to a cultural issue of why even bother? You know, if this team is so bootstrapped that I can't, like, you know, let it go for 3 days at a time, then what's the point of even trying? And so, you know, they're similar and very different at the same time, but really it is a communication, staffing, cultural issue for both facets, and those can be addressed.
So we've talked about the use of social media by Gen Z, and I am very interested in what other uses of technology Gen Z has discovered, unlocked, that you've seen have serious workplace implications.
You know, again, they have used their phone for everything for their whole lives, and so that is just permeating the workplace. You know, they are doing everything from like a day in my life video on TikTok where I'm always like, I can see your computer screen. Why are you showing me this? Which is, you know, just being young and maybe not educated on why that is not necessarily the best thing to do. But, you know, the other end of that phenomenon is I've watched so many TikToks of people being fired where they get a meeting on their calendar for like Friday at 4 p.m. from HR who they've never met before. And they're like, oh, I don't think this is going to be great. So I'm going to go ahead and set this up to protect myself, to have that insurance. And, you know, that is a perspective that a lot of, you know, people in this generation have. No value judgment, good or bad, but it is happening, and your managers, your HR department, your employees and employers who are interfacing with this cohort need to be aware of that is happening. They are documenting everything, and again, they are aware of what their rights are. They, you know, are like baby employment attorneys. It is very fascinating that they know about FMLA, they know about the EEOC, and I am just in awe because when I was 25, I had a lot to learn. But, you know, they are going to protect themselves because they watched, again, during COVID, employers had to do what they had to do to protect themselves, but there's a lot of fallout of that, right? Of seeing people who have been dedicated for decades to companies being let go or furloughed. And again, it is fair enough for an employer to do what they have to do to survive, but lessons were learned. And young people currently and moving forward are going to do the same. They're going to protect themselves.
Well, we have time for one last question, and this question is for both of you. Have you seen Gen Z influencing or reshaping any particular employer policies? I know, Jennie, in your work with employers all over the country, surely you've seen a few things.
Absolutely. I mean, one thing that I see a lot of and that we've addressed in a prior episode relates to drugs in the workplace policies. There's a big movement, you know, talking about this kind of organization, almost unionization of this generation and how they're impacting the workplace. There's a lot of pushback on having THC on your drug panel. And it's a struggle for manufacturers, especially in the South, Southeast, to find the appropriate workforce and retain them. And, you know, I think there's a more of a widespread acceptance among, I say, young people in the workplace now of the use, whether it's medicinal or recreational, of marijuana. And if you're going to be a manufacturer in the South and you're going to have that on your drug panel, you are going to struggle with having the workforce you need. So I would say one policy that at least I've seen being reshaped relates to, you know, the recreational use, people's ability to use marijuana outside of the workplace, not coming to work impaired, but being able to test positive for that and still retaining employment, even if it's recreational use. So a lot of manufacturers are quietly stripping that from their panels.
And we're only going to see more of that too. Statistics show that young people are drinking less and less, but they are participating in other things more and more. And so, employers who are jumping on that early, especially manufacturers, to Jenny's point, they're going to be the ones who are going to get talent and retain them, because that is just where we're going. And, I can't speak to any specific policies. Jenny obviously can, but culture shifts, there are some huge ones. And, I spoke earlier about phone breaks instead of smoke breaks. Millennials largely don't smoke. The anti-smoking campaign worked incredibly well on us. They stopped doing that, and now Gen Z vapes like it's going extinct. Like they are never going to get to vape again. And, you'll be on Zoom with younger workers, and you'll see them duck it to the side. It's like, I know you're vaping. What is happening? So to the point earlier of like phone breaks, smoke breaks are going to have to come back, but it is going to be vaping. Who knows what is in those vapes all the time, but like that is absolutely happening. Dress codes are changing. Bring your pet to work policies are, comfort animals, or, whatever kind of animals are. Dogs in the workplace, I just think is the best thing since sliced bread, but that is really on the rise.
We've had glider squirrels that we've managed. Yeah.
Now that is really fun, and I want to
Extra.
try. That was the perfect use. Love that. And we are going to talk more about that once we wrap this up, because I want to hear everything.
Rodents in the workplace. We'll talk about it next time.
But and those are all really fun. But I think the biggest cultural difference that is happening because of this cohort is an intolerance to bullying, to harassment, to any kind of discrimination. Like I said, in the previous episode, millennials expect it. Gen Z insist upon it. And, they are going to and will almost always call out any kind of problematic behavior they are seeing. And employers need to, their instinct cannot be, everybody's soft, the wussification of America. It has to be from a perspective of grace and understanding and saying, okay, why are we feeling this? And a lot of times they're pointing out bad acts that have just been kind of allowed to fester over time, and they're just so new in their career that they don't know that that's a thing that happens in workplaces. And so to them, it's very obvious of, I can't believe this is happening. Why is no one else talking about this? And so employers do really need to be aware that that is going to continue to happen. But by far, this group insists on a safe workplace, a just workplace, a fair workplace. They really expect to be able to go to work and feel safe.
Well, a lot to think about there. And I think a lot of those observations that you've made are very subjective between and among all of those generational groups. And so very interesting. Thank you very much for being here twice now. So we appreciate it. We will see you next time on Work This Way.